Hi everyone, in this video we are going to be talking about ancient China. This is the last of the 4 river valley civilizations that we will cover in this unit. We are going to be describing the historical origins, central ideas, and spread of major religious and philosophical traditions that originated in ancient China. We will describe the role of women and children and families in the civilization, and we will also identify the origin and diffusion of some of the ideas in math, science, and technology that came from ancient China. By the time that we are finished, you will have compared and contrasted some of the characteristics of the 4 river valley civilizations. Alright, so we'll start with the geography of ancient China. This civilization is going to be located to the east in this area here near the Yellow River. This is Northeast Asia. This river here is the one that the ancient Chinese depended on for survival. It also floods annually, just like the Indus River in India and also the Nile River in Egypt, and the Tigris and Euphrates in Mesopotamia. And it's a very isolated civilization. This particular civilization did not have much contact with people outside of its region. As you can see, it is the distance is an issue, and also you have a set of mountains that divides this part of Asia from the rest of the West. So we'll do our journal entry first this time. Think about why China is isolated, and think about what some of the benefits of being isolated like China could be. So what are some of the benefits that being an isolated civilization like ancient China could have, and what are some of the challenges? Make sure you give at least 2 examples of each, and your journal should be at least 5 sentences long. Okay. So now we'll move along to religion. Ancient Chinese religion was polytheistic. The ancient Chinese honored the ghosts of their ancestors daily. They were also pretty superstitious, and there are going to be 3 major religions or philosophies that emerged from ancient China, and we'll discuss those in a little more detail. Daoism is the first that we will discuss. This is a polytheistic religion, and the main belief is that they want to achieve unity and harmony with nature. So it's all about balance, and the yin and yang symbol that you might have seen before comes from this religion. Although it's spelled with a T, it's pronounced Daoism. The next one we'll discuss is Confucianism. This was a very influential philosophy in ancient China. It was not a religion. Confucius, the man you see pictured here, was the leader of this movement, and he talked about ethics and honor, and there were very strict rules for society based on his beliefs. And lastly, we'll talk about Buddhism. Have you ever seen this figure in some of the local shops? It comes from this religion. The Buddha is their symbol, and the golden Buddha represents happiness and abundance. This religion actually came from India, and it was brought to China through trade. People came into contact with each other, and these ideas were shared, and Buddhism became much more popular in China than it did in India. The main belief of Buddhists is that they are trying to achieve enlightenment through meditation. And now we'll talk about the ancient Chinese achievements. The ancient Chinese were a very advanced civilization, and some of their inventions include paper, silk, gunpowder, porcelain, and even the compass. They are the first to develop calligraphy, which is their system of writing that you see pictured down here. They also practiced medicine. Acupuncture was used to prevent diseases or to relieve pain or other ailments. They did practice preventative medicine, and they even used vaccines to try to ward off potential illnesses. What you see here is a pagoda, and that is a building that was also brought from India. The idea of the pagoda was brought from India, and they were used as Buddhist temples. And lastly, the Great Wall of China, which most of you should be familiar with. This structure, which is miles and miles and miles long, was built for protection from invasion, and it is one of the greatest wonders of the world, and a huge tourist attraction in China today. Alright, so we'll talk briefly about their politics. Their ruling families are called dynasties. They have a monarchy in this civilization. These ruling families get their power to rule from the gods, and that is called the mandate of heaven. In other words, they justify their position in society by saying that the gods want them to be in power. And they go through a dynastic cycle. So dynasties can be replaced if the rulers aren't good and the gods no longer want them in power. So this is how the dynastic cycle works. When a new dynasty comes to power, they restore peace. They appoint officials that are not corrupt. They redistribute land, and so they make peasants very happy. They build canals, they build irrigation systems and roads, and so they make a lot of improvements that keep people happy. And they also repair defensive walls so people are more protected. After several generations of rulers from this dynasty, the dynasty then becomes an aging dynasty. And aging dynasties, because they become very comfortable and often corrupt, they neglect the duties of the government. They ignore other corrupt officials. They look the other way. They lose control of provinces. They begin to impose heavy taxes to pay for luxuries, and they also allow the defensive walls to decay. The aging dynasty will eventually lose the mandate of heaven. A lot of problems will ravish the dynasty, things like floods, famine, and earthquakes, which are really coincidences, but the ancient Chinese attributed this to the gods being upset with the dynasty. There will also be invasions from enemies. Armed bandits will increase in the provinces, and peasants who are unhappy will revolt. And eventually a new dynasty is going to claim that they have the mandate of heaven, and the system starts all over again. And now let's talk about the economy. There are 4 major professions in ancient China. You had scholars, farmers, your artists, and your merchants. The economy depended heavily on trade through the Silk Roads. The Silk Roads are a system of trade routes. They're mostly by land, but there were also some sea routes that linked China to the West. And not only did they trade goods, but this led to cultural diffusion. That means that through trade, ideas spread from the east to the west and from the west to the east. And lastly, we'll talk about the social structure. Women in ancient China were considered inferior to men. All marriages were arranged, and there was also a practice of foot binding that originated in ancient China. The ancient Chinese believed that small feet were a sign of beauty, and so girls from a very young age had their feet broken and bandaged so that they could be forced to be small and deformed. This is a very painful process. Some little girls even died from complications of having this procedure done. Eventually it was made illegal in the early 1900s, but the practice did originate in this time period. I will attach a video to this lesson so that you can see what the practice looked like. Alright, and that brings us to the end of the lecture. If you have any questions, make sure that you get with me when you get to class, and thanks for watching.